What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my in-depth analysis and review of the new weapon refines, and I'll also be going over the builds that you can run on these units. So Mikoto by far is the winner of this batch as she gets a unique effect in her refine. So she gets Doting Staff, which has the Dazzling Staff and Flash effect built into it. She can also get +4 attack and speed during the combat, and then she gets a unique effect called CANTO Control. So if there's any kind of foe within 4 spaces of her who uses CANTO, she can reduce their movement. So if it's a melee foe who uses CANTO within 4 spaces of her, then they're just going to be getting their movement reduced to 1 when their CANTO triggers. And if it's a ranged foe like Yuri for example, they cannot even move at all when their CANTO triggers, so they just end their turn and then they're left there in the range of the opponent and cannot really run away. So this kind of effect obviously is going to be a really meta relevant effect against a lot of the CANTO threats, especially in Summoner duels. So this weapon refine is a lot more geared towards Summoner duels, because in other game modes it's going to be a bit hard to have Mikoto included, but in Summoner duels it's just crazy how much CANTO is present there, especially in Summoner duels R, S, and wherever it's not restricted. So this allows you to basically shut that CANTO unit down, but keep in mind that Mikoto needs to be alive as well, so you pretty much need to protect her with a far save unit so that she doesn't get sniped by the very CANTO unit that she's preventing the CANTO off. So Mikoto pretty much goes from 0 to hero with this weapon refine, making her really meta relevant as of right now, having this kind of effect against the CANTO units and giving her a ton of potential in Summoner duels. Now, having praised her enough, I really want to go over the fact that she's a healer at the end of the day, and she doesn't really have any other supportive capability other than having the CANTO control. By this I mean, if you look at Reeve or Loki, even if they're not able to use their stall effect against the opponents, they can still debuff the opponent. But Mikoto here, if the opponent does not use any kind of CANTO unit or you already kill their CANTO unit, then she doesn't really give you any kind of other support. Sure, she can provide you with the flash effect, but she will have to engage into a combat first to actually do that. Now this might sound a bit nitpicky, but there are still a lot more monstrous units that do not even rely on CANTO. You probably know them like Duochrome, Desert Carla, Newer Dagger, and we also have Brave Alm and many more other units. So against them, Mikoto doesn't really give you any kind of support, is pretty much what I mean. And another heads up which I want to give is that usually this kind of effect, which is so meta relevant, is not going to be staying on a single unit. They're probably going to be releasing the same effect on a modern unit on a banner, and they're pretty much going to be using this effect to sell that banner and that unit. So that unit might be a lot more offensive than Mikoto or a lot more supportive, so that could happen. So I'm just giving this heads up so that just because you saw CANTO control doesn't mean that you have to give her all kinds of resources and then frantically summon on the new power banner, which doesn't even have a spark. So Mikoto is extremely good now with this weapon refine with this supportive niche, and I'm definitely not knocking on her potential. I myself am going to be using her, and I've already started to use her actually, but like I mentioned before, there are certain things which you have to keep in mind. Right now, she's the only one with this effect, but time will tell how long that will last and how many other units will end up with who have got this CANTO control. If you want to build up Mikoto, then on a budget you can definitely try her out and see if she works out for you or not. So you can just run Chill Attack in her slot B as a budget skill and have double distant guard. Like I said, it is going to be really important for you to protect her with a good far save unit so that she does not get sniped and she's actually alive. So when someone attacks your far save tank, even if they're able to kill your far save tank, if it's someone like Yuri or a CANTO unit, they're not going to be able to move and you can just get the revenge kill on them in the Summoner duels. And like I was saying before, you really need to get the full support out of Mikoto in other aspects as well. And a simple way of doing that is HP stacking on her and using Even Pulse Tie and Infantry Pulse. So Infantry Pulse can help you pre-charge the specials of your units, and then Even Pulse Tie can definitely help you against the opposing pre-charge specials. And people are going to be using Duochrome as well, and they can definitely play smartly and avoid Even Pulse Tie, but still it's a really good effect to have. Especially when pre-charge specials are really common. And Return Plus is also a way of making her a bit more useful so that she actually has some movement utility with that assist skill. So going all out support with this kind of HP build is definitely one way to run her, but you can also go the offensive route and simply have attack speed ideal 4 from the divine code section, as well as attack speed form 3. So this can allow her to have a better combat, and that can help you if you're trying to make her offensive. And if you want to extend her support even further with the HP stacking, then of course HP IV and Summoner support is going to be helping you, and you can run something like Sudden Panic. This can be really useful against certain bonus units, like if there are people trying to use bonus doubler strats, then this kind of effect with Sudden Panic is going to be really helpful. And again, Infantry Pulse is going to be a universal support that you can definitely utilize, but you can just run a buffing skill or any kind of other support on her slot C. Now she can also be used in AETHER defense, specifically in the anime season where everyone is going to be using Regen to hit and run, but I'm not really too convinced in her AETHER defense potential. The main reasoning is that unlike Summoner duels, people do have access to 5 teams in AETHER raids, and most good players are going to be having different strategies at their disposal. So when they see Mikoto, they're not going to be bringing their Yuri or whatever CANTO unit. Instead, they're going to be bringing some kind of safe tank, maybe someone like Ascended Fiorm who has got Null Counter Disrupt in her weapon. So flash effect of Mikoto is not really going to be making a huge difference, and they're just going to be able to tank your entire team, and Mikoto is not going to be adding too much. So that is one of the scenarios, but still you're going to be discouraging the usage of hit and run strategies like with Yuri. So it really depends on your team, and if you're trying to take that gamble and have a healer on your team, because I feel like healers have definitely kind of fallen off, especially with safe defense, making odd recovery not that strong, and then also the flash effect getting weakened by Ascended Fiorm, and also the fact that a lot of tanks run Mystic Boost, so your Wrathful Staff is going to get cancelled many times, and your healer might not even do that much damage. So this is the build that you can run. Still, odd recovery is going to be helpful to just cleanse the debuffs from your team, and you can just run Distant Guard to support your teammates. So yeah, this is definitely an option, but I feel like our main usage is going to be in Summoner duels, where it is going to be a CANTO land, just CANTO units getting spammed. She can definitely be a nice tech option there, and even a nice counter pick in Summoner Duels S. Legendary Azura gets her remix and refined this month, and they're pretty tame in nature, but still it's an upgrade, and now she can function even better. Her refined condition allows her to give +6 visible buff to allies within 2 spaces of her. And this is definitely the most useful part of her weapon refine, I would say, because this allows you to free up your slotsy skill, and you no longer have to depend on the tactic skill to give that kind of buff. And now with her weapon alone, she can give that buff, and then when she refreshes them with Grey Waves too, she can just spread those buffs and make your unit fully buffed. So this kind of effect is extremely good for this kind of supportive unit. And then she can get +5 attack and speed during the combat, and she also ends up getting Triangle Adept. So yeah, extra stats and Triangle Adept is whatever, but still, at the end of the day, having more offenses on a dancer can give you an option to kill with your dancer. I know you're not always going to be using your dancer for that specific role, but still having that option is nice, which you probably know is pretty good to have if you have used Desert Azura or like Triandra or stuff like that. So she just has better matchup against the red units and worse matchup against green units. She was not really killing any green units even before this. So this Triangle Adept effect pretty much makes it a bit harder for the green opponents to bait her out, because dancers will only attack if they do 5 or more damage. But this also means that the red opponents can easily bait her out because of this Triangle Adept effect when she's in the AI's hands. So whenever you face Legendary Azura in Arena or anywhere else, you have to keep this in mind and, just maybe bait her out with a red unit. So she's going to be able to do more damage to the red foes, but also gets baited out by them a lot harder now. And she also gets the extra attack and speed, so that further contributes to her getting pretty easily baited out. So yeah, the main thing about this weapon refine is the fact that she can free up her slotsy skill, and her remix is also pretty tame in nature. Grey Waves 2 just gives you the Null Panic to your infantry and flying ally, who gets refreshed, and only to those units, not even to armors or to cavalry units. So yeah, this is also not really too insane, and personally I think that she was already a pretty good dancer, so it makes sense why they pretty much gave her a tame refine and remix. But I definitely understand from where people are coming from who are disappointed in her weapon refine, because after all, this was our first dancer weapon refine and remix, and it's not like the time when she first came out, there's a lot more competition among dancers as well. Her desert self is also there to provide her the competition. There's Duo Peony and other dancers as well. But still, even despite this tame upgrade, she can still be a good dancer and a good support unit and still just do her job now just a bit better. On a budget, you can simply run ground orders as her sacred seal and buff up the attack and speed of your allies, but the true usage of her weapon refine is by having another slotty skill that is not a buffing skill. So you can run drive attack or any kind of other supportive skill, because now she can just buff up the allies with her prayer wheel and then dance them up. So you don't necessarily have to run a toxic skill if you do not have a team for that. And the third build is pretty much combining all of the flying shenanigans with Wings of Mercy, ground orders in the Slotsy, and aerobatics. So you have so many movement options with this build, and this is again only possible because she can buff up with her prayer wheel. You can also use her in arena if you do have her at plus in merge, and any kind of dancer is going to be significantly making your arena experience much better, even if she doesn't really score that high. But still, she's a water legendary unit at the end of the day, which can definitely help you in the water season. So you can run an expensive slotsy skill like crossbar attack for example, and have guidance for the movement shenanigans. And you can also run a Fatre skill here, just so that she can dance and then move away and not be in the danger zone. So that's definitely an option. And then speed resistance hold is also a very expensive support option that you can run. And you can run a supportive sacred seal like ground orders for example, or guidance, depending on whichever one you want to run with your team. King Garon gets a pretty nice weapon refine that makes him a lot more tanky. So with this weapon refine, he can have the null dragon effectiveness, which means that he can take on units like Brave Alm, Thrasier, and other dragon effective units much easily compared to the other dragons because of not having any kind of weakness against them. On turn 3 and 4, he can inflict 13 splash damage to foes who are within 4 spaces of him, and simultaneously heal his own HP depending on the foes that he has damaged. So for example, if he damages 2 foes with this effect, then he can heal up 26 HP, which is still quite a lot. He can also get plus an attack during the combat with this weapon refine and inflict -10 attack debuff on the opponent during the combat. So this is really fantastic for his mixed bulk. And then finally he can end up having the guard effect in this weapon refine. So the guard effect is really nice for any kind of tank, and in a way it can free up his slotty skill and make it a bit easier for him to run other slotty skills like distant counter for example, while not really losing out on the guard effect that he would have to run the stand skill for. So this definitely opens up a bit more options for him and certainly makes him a lot more tanky. The turn 3 and 4 splash damage effect can certainly help you in summoner duels and Aether offense for damaging the opponents and also healing up. And Garon after this weapon refine definitely becomes a lot better as a tank and certainly a pretty nice grail option in the free to play pool, but I wouldn't really say that he's completely insane like Walhart's level of weapon refine or anything like that, but he's definitely much more solid, which is a good news for any kind of Garon user. So because he's a free to play unit and he's also old, quite literally, you pretty much have to use all of the merges and dragon flowers because this kind of tank really appreciates any kind of extra stats that he can get. So his standard distant counter, quick riposte build is going to be functioning well on him, and he can just run steady breath and Ignis so that he can hit really hard with that special and making productive use of the -10 attack debuff that he can put on the opponent, because he pretty much ends up having like 50 resistance, so he's definitely quite capable of running distant counter, and his stats are quite min-max for a free to play unit, so he can definitely fit into this role in the enemy phase tanking. And if you want to take this a step further, then you can definitely run distant stance, which can give him extra 5 resistance, and also run Dragon's Ire instead of running quick riposte. So Dragon's Ire is basically a better quick riposte with better HP threshold, and it can also let you bypass the effects that prevent your follow-up attacks. So that can definitely help you in finishing off some of the matchups where your opponents are using impact effects and stuff like that. So this is definitely an expensive build, but it is going to be really useful for tanking. And then you can also run Dragon Wall if you're running distant stance, and Defense Res Menace is actually available in the Divine Code section now, and dragons are definitely one of the better users of this kind of menace skill because of their adaptive damage, and he can also make use of the Dragon Wall skill much better because of the resistance debuff and the buff that he can get out of this menace skill. So it's certainly a pretty nice build option that he can use at max investment by stacking up a lot of resistance and then making use of that damage reduction and the guard effect to make himself really bulky. He can also be used on Summoner Duels, like I said, especially if you cover him up with a far save unit. So he can be an absolute tank at the melee range and maybe block the path. It really depends on the map, honestly, but he can basically use Close Defense 4 to deny any of the visible buffs of the opponent, and visible buffs are definitely quite common in Summoner Duels. If you stall out until turn 3 and 4, he can definitely damage the opponents for free and also heal up at the same time, which can certainly be a bit annoying and it may catch many opponents off guard. So it's an interesting option for sure, and he can definitely be run in Arena as well with R-Duel Infantry 4. And because the AI is going to be moving here, unlike Summoner Duels, you can definitely have the option of concentrating all of the enemy's units within that 4-tile radius of him until turn 3, where he can just damage them for free and also get the HP back. And Panic Ploy could be run with his high HP, and you can simply run the Steady Breath Ether build, which can function, and you can also run Lull Attack Resistance and Quick Riposte. That is also an option, but Dragon Sire can certainly help you against these annoying enemies which are going to be having the follow-up negation. He can also be used in Aether offense as a melee tank, again who's covered by a far save tank. He can also be used as a distant counter dragon as well, but you can always specialize him for the melee matchups where he can definitely shine. So you can run the Unity skill here because you're going to be on the front line and getting debuffed by Note, so the Unity skill definitely helps you a lot. And Dragon Sire, Joint Drive Attack, and Steady Breath with Ignis is going to be a pretty standard build option that you can utilize in most game modes. Year Gunnthra gets a pretty solid weapon refine that generally tries to follow the archetype of Gunnthra and her effects. So now with Hikami, she can debuff the nearest foes within 4 spaces of her for -6 to all of their stats, and then she can also debuff them during the combat for a total of -8 to all of their stats. And then finally, she can get the Blizzard effect, which is also considered like a broadly fan effect, which gives you extra attack depending on the visible debuffs on the opponent. So this does have pretty good synergy with the debuffs that she can get with her weapon refine, and this really powers her up for doing a lot of damage and hitting really hard. So despite being a melee unit and a sword flyer, she can definitely hit some absurd amount of damage output, and she's definitely going to be having trouble against any kind of slick fighter or any kind of opponent who can neutralize the debuffs or maybe handle them with the Unity effect. But other than that, basically Gunnthra is going to be debuffing the nearest foes to hell with this effect and then hitting them really hard. And even if she cannot really hit the opponent, she can still support your team with those debuffs. And if you're using units like Legendary Lucina or Male Morgan or any kind of other unit who can make use of these debuffs productively, they're definitely going to be enjoying this kind of support from Year Gunnthra. If you want to build her up on a budget, then you can simply go with Hit and Run as a way of having a bootleg CANTO skill or Trace skill. So yeah, this is really cheap to build, and you can just have Savage Blow and hit really hard in the player phase. But if you want to invest into her a bit more, then you can certainly run Dive Bomb on her. So this allows her to get the consecutive 2 hits, but again, if you're going to be facing any kind of opponent with the follow-up negation, she's not going to be able to double. But still, against the opponents who do not have that effect, she can certainly hit really hard and hit twice. You can also run her with a Neo Trace skill, and this is pretty much going to be one of her best options. So this gives her a retreat option so that she can move back to her allies after maybe blowing up an enemy that she's just debuffed, and this can certainly be useful in Summoner Duels. And she does have the natural synergy with the Cat skill with her debuffs. So the Cat skill does have that secondary effect where it does want the penalties to be on the opponent, and Hikami does exactly that. And then she can stack up even more in combat debuffs with the Speed Defense Rain and the Neo Trace skill. And she can be a strong unit depending on the maps, because a lot of the Summoner Duels maps are really flyer favored, so she could be helpful in Summoner Duels S maybe, or even in the Book 3 and prior metagame. And you can also run her with Sword Sparrow because she does have that HP threshold in her weapon, so she can heal up some HP with this, and she can also have Flow Guard. So like I mentioned before, the enemies who have the follow-up negation and if they have damage reduction can certainly live her hits. So having Flow Guard allows her to penetrate those follow-up negation effects and still double, and the guard effect can actually be a lot more useful in the player phase than you think, because a lot of enemies run some kind of bread skill or special fighter or some kind of way of retaliating back with the special. So with the guard effect, she can prevent getting blown herself by a special of the enemy and still double them and hopefully heal up HP by triggering her 2 cooldown special. So it's not a near trade skill, which definitely leaves something more to be desired in terms of the retreat options, but still Flow Guard does have its own utility, and it really depends on how you're trying to use your Year Gunnthra. And then finally you can use her in arena where flyers are always going to be the queens, where the maps are so flyer favored. So she can just run around those maps, debuff the opponents, and support your team and also hit really hard. And Ruptured Sky doesn't really give you that much value when you're going to be debuffing the attack of your opponent by this much. So that's why you can just run Heavy Blade and Gale Force, because as it is, she's going to be hitting pretty good with that debuff and the Blizzard effect. Sue was always in a pretty awkward position as a 5-star logged unit when her father, Wrath, in the normal summoning pool was giving her competition, and also Python for the role of fake Greenbow Cavalier. But now it changes as she gets access to Cook Mulagir, which is a pretty good weapon refine, and now she can stand out compared to those other Greenbow Cavaliers. So this weapon allows her to have plus 10 attack and speed during the combat, which is definitely really good for the offensive capability. And she can get the Fire Sweep effect if she's got 5 or more speed than the opponent. So basically if she can naturally double the opponent, they cannot really counter attack. And she can also get 15% true damage based on her speed on her first attack. And the final effect allows her to have this 7 splash damage to her target and also foes within 2 spaces of her. So combined with the Fire Sweep effect, she can definitely chip down the enemies, especially some really bulky opponents, and also not do 0 damage, which is definitely pretty nice for a Fire Sweep unit. But unfortunately her true damage is only on her first attack and not on her second attack, so most of the time like she can reach up to like 10-11 true damage on her first attack, which is definitely much better, but still the bulky opponents have way too much HP, but still it's something I guess. And then you can also do the splash damage. So this can definitely allow you to chip them down, but if you face something like Ascended Fiorm, it is going to be annoying. But against most of the other slow far safe tanks, she can safely attack them and chip them down and even inflict them with Fatal Smoke if you do run that. And Sue does have much better combat now, but does need to win that speed check in order to get that Fire Sweep effect. On a budget, you can just run Sue with Poison Strike, Savage Blow, and Blade Session Sacred Seal. So Blade Session can definitely help her with the combat, and then Poison Strike and Savage Blow pretty much add to her splash damage and help you chip down the bulky opponents with the Fire Sweep effect that she has in her Weapon Refine. She can also run Susparo 3 and Loud Speed Defense. So about her slot A skills, the options are pretty limited because running Attack Speed Push 4 or Fury 4 is not going to be the best option because she does have that HP threshold in her weapon, and Attack Speed Catch 4 is not going to be having the best synergy with the splash damage that she can do with her weapon. So Attack Speed Catch does require the opponent to have full HP as one of its conditions, so that's why it doesn't have the best synergy. So one of her main options is going to be Susparo 3 or Attack Speed Solo 4, depending on whichever you have, and Loud Speed Defense ends up being a pretty nice slot B option. Well, to be fair, she pretty much has like 2 options in slot B, either a Trace skill or a Loud skill, and considering that we just got Newer Lethe as an Ephemera manual, this could be run on her so that she can just neutralize any kind of visible buff of the opponent to their speed and defense and just stack up offensively. You can also use her with a complete solo build with Attack Speed Solo 4 in the slot A and the Sacred Seal, and also running Rouse Attack Speed 4, and then having the Fortress skill so that she can get the Canto as well as the debuffs. And Deadeye could be run on this kind of max investment Sue. Deadeye again depends on your own damage output, and that's why having this at max investment and higher merges is definitely going to be helping you with the damage output. Sue can also be used in arena with G-Dual Cavalry 4, which is definitely a rare skill. But this definitely allows you to chip down the obnoxiously bulky opponents with her Fire Sweep effect and also inflict the Panic Smoke on them. So rally skills and visible buffs are quite common in arena, so she can simply use the Fire Sweep effect and inflict them with the easy Panic, which is going to be helping your other allies. She also has application in Aether defense, so she could be used on a dark team with Note and other Cavaliers, and her Fire Sweep effect can certainly be helpful, and especially the true damage. And because of the Fire Sweep effect, she can easily inflict Fatal Smoke on far safe armors like Brave Hector or Ascended Idun. But if she faces Ascended Fiorm, then yeah, it is going to be bad news for her because she gets the true damage only on her first attack, and she doesn't really have the highest bulk. She doesn't get any kind of extra defense out of her weapon either, so Ascended Fiorm will not really have much trouble. But against any kind of other far save opponent, she can definitely stack up a lot of offenses with her weapon, the plus in attack and speed that she gets, then the ARD skill, and then the Blade Session to hit really hard, and then just nullifying the visible buffs with the Lult skill. The final unit in this batch is going to be Shigure, and he gets a decent weapon refine that's hybrid. It's a bit offensive and also a bit supportive. So he can get plus 10 attack and speed during the combat with this refine, and also plus 7 true damage per hit. So it definitely helps with his combat potential. And then if Shigure uses a rally skill or a movement assist skill, or if he's a target of those things, then he can buff himself up and the target ally with plus 6 attack and speed, and also heal both of them for 10 HP. So this is really unique because not only he's buffing up, but he's also healing up the ally. And this works with both rally and movement assist, which I don't think we have seen before on this kind of effect. So Shigure ends up having this cool effect of healing up the allies and also buffing them up, while still having good combat himself with the extra offenses and the true damage he gets. And in Fates, he was definitely a meta-relevant rally bot, and this refine is pretty much a reference to his personal skill. But unfortunately in Fae, it may be a bit hard for him to stand out in the crowded class of a Lance Flyer. On a budget, you can definitely make Shigure into a buff bot with defense res link, which goes perfectly well with the attack speed link in a sense that he has in his weapon, and he can just run some other support, Slotsy skill and Sacred Seal. You can actually make use of the snag skill, and this is probably one of the few times that I actually run this on a build. And attack defense snag is actually available on Spring Luthier and also in the Divine Code section. So you can just run defense tactic, resistance tactic, make him into a buff bot, and then also debuff the opponents with the snag skill, because flying units cannot really have access to the ruse skill for whatever reason. And then you can also use him more offensively at max investment or at higher merges with Dive Bomb, which could be found in the Divine Code section. So he can basically get the 14 true damage because he can attack consecutively, and he can also just stack up all of the offenses with the Rain skill, Slotty skill, and Blade Session to function in a player face build. You can also use him with a Cat skill and have a Neo Trace skill. This is a pretty bread and butter combo for any kind of flyer, as they do not really have a lot of slot view options, and Trace skills are pretty much one of the best ones. And you can run attack speed Rain because he doesn't really get any kind of extra bulk, and you can just run an offensive Sacred Seal or maybe a supportive Sacred Seal, really depends on your team. And I feel like his best usage in Aether offense is for supporting a save ball. He can fully buff up the allies with the Link skill and also his attack and speed buff from his weapon refine, and also provide you with the Rain debuff. So the strategy is to basically put Shigure in front and then have him covered up by the near save and far save armor units. So when they overlap on Shigure, they will actually get the benefit of the Rain skill debuff on the opponents. And you can run Distant Guard to give more bulk to your far save tank. And this could be run in the Astro season where air is not present. Air does have that Sparkling Boost plus, which is, just superior to that of Shigure, because Shigure actually has to use an action to heal up an ally, but air just does that at start of a turn. But still, this could be used in the Astro season, and it is something unique that you can have. And if you're someone like me who doesn't really run Healing Tower, then this could certainly help with some healing and also some support for your save ball. And finally, he can be run in Arena with B-Dual Flying 4. Healing is something that is not really all that common in Arena unless you run Micaiah or something like that. Healers simply do not score well. So Shigure comes here with B-Dual Flying 4, giving you those buffs and also healing up your allies. And Rally Defense Res Plus is the most optimal rally skill for him for Arena purpose. And a Trace skill is just too valuable in Arena for having those movement utility. And also you can just stack up the offenses with the standard Rain skill and Blade Session. So overall, these weapon refines are not really going to be too insane, but still they help these units and upgrade them a bit. And Mikoto is going to be a meta relevant unit as of right now, at least, where she has got the CANTO control, and I'm definitely going to be trying to use her and see how she functions. So let me know in the comments which of these weapon refines is your favorite, and be sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up any of these units. I went in depth with a lot of the builds options as well. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as CANTO against Mikoto. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.